see the truth in every lie. Get a little closer, baby, it'll never call me.
Hey, thank you for joining us today. This is Ed Mills with the Colorado Broadband Office. We are so glad that you're with us today in our Lunch and Learn series. Today, we're going to learn how Roaring Fork Valley partners continue to expand broadband services. But before we do that, I just want to let you know that we have a Lunch and Learn every month. It's usually about the last, either the third or the fourth week of every month, usually on a Tuesday. There are a few exceptions, but these are just ways that we can encourage you to learn about other folks and how they're figuring out this broadband challenge that we have in the state of Colorado. Please always check out our website. We have a lot of resources there. In fact, this resource will be posted in about 2 or 3 days in our video on demand section, and you can go back or you can point other folks to exactly what was learned today. Today, we are going to turn it over to our presenters, and I'm going to ask that you save any of your questions for the end of the presentation. I think these guys will do a great job with Jeff and Dr. Paul Schultz in answering your questions. But if you do have any questions ahead of time, if you want, put it in the chat feature. And definitely we'd love to hear from you if you want to ask those questions when we get to the Q&A. But you didn't come here to listen to me. So today we're learning how Roaring Fork Valley partners continue to expand broadband services throughout the region by leveraging existing fiber optic, radio communications, and data center resources. New initiatives are underway in Snowmass Village, Basalt, and along Highway 82. That's what's made it possible for regional collaboration and partnerships like the CBO, Northwest Council of Governments, or the NWCCOG, and Project THOR. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over. Jeff, would you introduce yourself and Dr. Paul?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. This is actually a photo taken from one of our tower sites of Aspen last fall. So just a beautiful fall day in Aspen. Unfortunately, we're not having such luck today. It's snowing here today, so but much needed snow. Let me start out by introducing myself, and I'll turn it over to Paul. I'm the Telecommunications Director for Pitkin County. I'm an electrical engineer, CU Boulder alum. I've been in the communications industry, specializing primarily in RF for the last 35 years. I previously worked for Northrop Grumman, doing satellite payload RF design, as well as ground station communication RF design. Worked for Lucid Technologies for a while, and also worked for Boeing Aerospace. I started with Pitkin County about 6 years ago now, and was hired to redesign and modernize our communications infrastructure. Paul, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Thank you, Jeff, and thank you, Ed. My name is Paul Schultz. I'm the City of Aspen IT Director. I've been here a little over 5 years. Prior to this, I guess I'm a reformed software engineer. My education experience is primarily in computer science. I had a long career in the communications and internet industries, and have really enjoyed the collaborations that have led to far better broadband for the city and for our region. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. So let's go ahead and begin. This is going to be separated out into 3 areas of discussion. One being the Pitkin County Broadband Initiative, which I'll talk about. Paul's going to talk about the Aspen Community Broadband. And then I'll wrap it up and talk about a new project that's underway called the Roaring Fork Broadband Project. Let's get started. So here's an overview. Pitkin County is not unlike other counties, municipalities throughout Colorado and the region that are lacking affordable, high capacity, and low cost broadband. We have about 1,000 square miles. Our population is about 18,000 residents, and nearly a third of those residents live in areas that do not have adequate broadband or even cell coverage. The problem is, of course, low population density. We have no middle mile networks going to many areas. A couple examples are Redstone, Colorado and Thomasville, Colorado. We have very challenging mountainous terrain, which is of course difficult in itself for getting middle mile networks. And we have no private sector investment. So the return on investment is too low for private sector to come in. And therefore, without some form of public investment, we do not see broadband in these areas. So what is the Pitkin County Broadband Initiative? Well, it's a public-private partnership to bring affordable, resilient broadband to residents in unserved and underserved Pitkin County. And that's its main purpose. Here's a background. This really goes back over 10 years now. Our Board of County Commissioners recognized the lack of broadband in our area. A referendum was passed on a translator mill levy to allow that mill levy to be used for broadband services. In 2014, they established what is called the Pitkin County Broadband Initiative. And from there, we proceeded to do both studies and development to build out a broadband. First, in 2015, we did a feasibility study. This primarily did, looked at what assets do we currently have? What's the coverage analysis or heat maps from those assets? And it also developed high-level architectures as well as options for implementation. From there, we proceeded to do a phase 1 development and a phase 2 development. This in phase 1 included the rebuild of 3 tower sites. It included the expansion of our middle mile microwave backhaul system. And it also developed a fixed wireless last mile system. Phase 2 built on that with the addition of 3 more tower sites. And all along the way, let's just say that DOLA, we are so thankful to DOLA for their participation and support of this project. And as you can see, there were quite a few grants to get there. So if you look back to 2016, before this all started, Pitkin County, we had a number of mountaintop assets. Problem was that they were in extremely poor condition. Most of them were just being used for a TV FM translator broadcast system. They were literally shacks that were 40 to 50 years old that had never been updated, maintained, or rebuilt for that matter. The good news is that we had those assets. They were on, most of them are on US Forest Service land. We've been paying leases on them for decades. We had the asset, they were just in poor condition. We also have a public safety system, and those assets were in fairly good condition, mainly because they're used for public safety, but it also included few tower sites, as well as some microwave links going to our 911 dispatch center. So based on our current assets, we did a coverage analysis to see what households we could hit based on coverage analysis for 365 gig and 5 gig fixed wireless systems. This was actually performed by our GIS department. And I would recommend that if anybody's looking to do a fixed wireless system, that they consult with their GIS department to do this. This was actually, the actual frequencies were overlaid on terrain, as well as household parcels, in order to get a number of households hit. And as you can see, we actually cover a very extensive amount of our valley with our existing assets. And from there, we proceeded to do our phase 1 and 2 build. And this is what our network looks like today. We have all new tower sites located throughout Pitkin County. We actually have a tower site in Garfield County and one in Eagle County as well. They're all connected via high performance microwave backhaul. We have fiber connections coming up the valley through Project 4 and a partnership with City of Aspen. So it includes both 10G fiber from CenturyLink and Comcast. So we have redundancy in terms of microwave loops, as well as redundancy and resiliency bit in with multiple fiber coming up the valley. I thought I'd share some pictures of some of our site builds. This happens to be Elephant, and it sits above Redstone, Colorado. The picture on the left is what it originally looked like. It was literally a shack with 4 or 5 guide towers that were in such disrepair. I think 3 of them, we could no longer even climb them anymore. So this is kind of what we inherited, but the pictures on the right show what we have today. Completely rebuilt, 2 40-foot self-sustaining towers, an equipment shelter, a generator shelter, supports TV/FM translator system, supports public safety, and it also supports our fixed wireless system. Here's another example. This is a site that sits above Thomasville, Colorado on the Frying Pan River. Again, the picture on left is what we inherited. A rat-infested shack with some electronics in it, no fan even. It would overheat in the summer, and all the electronics would turn off middle of the afternoon. What's on the right is the rebuild. This is actually completed this past year over the summer. So we have a new efficient site that supports broadband, public safety, has multiple redundant microwave links coming into it. And this site is going to last decades into the future. And this is just 2 examples of 7 sites that have been rebuilt in the last 4 years. So how did we get there? One thing that you're kind of seeing that's prevalent in the industry right now is public-private partnerships. Pitkin County Broadband Initiative was no exception. We seeked to go into a public-private partnership. Our model for this is that the county owns all of the infrastructure, so all the towers, the shelters, the microwave backhaul. We even own the access points. But then we have a network operator, which in turn manages the fixed wireless broadband system. So this includes all the switch network, the access points. They also manage billing services to the ISPs as well as value-added resellers. We went to RFP to actually select a network operator. And in that RFP process, we ended up selecting Mammoth Networks. Now, part of this model as well is that Mammoth Networks in turn contracts out to ISPs. Our goal initially was to have 2 ISPs to have a cost competitive product. We offered services, we offer packages, at least in fixed wireless, of 10 meg, 25 meg, and 40 meg down. And we had price points that we required that the ISPs meet. They in turn install CPE equipment at the home. They perform all the installation, they do the truck rolls. They manage the service delivery, and they also do billing to the end customer. And this has been in effect now for almost 3 years. I have to say it's actually going extremely well in terms of subscribers, how we work together. Mammoth has a 24-hour knock so that if there's any issues, we get immediately notified, especially since we manage the middle mile network. Like any project, there's design challenges. We certainly had our share. And I thought what I do, since this is lunch and learn, is hopefully I can impart kind of what we learned in terms of our design challenges for doing fixed wireless. And Number one was bandwidth and throughput. This is an entirely microwave backhaul system. Our goal was to try to get to 2 gigabits per second in the backhaul. That's not easy, especially over the distances we had. Most microwave links in our system are on the order of 10 to 35 miles. So they're long links, and we wanted high throughput. Another one was resiliency and redundancy. We needed both the middle mile fiber as well as microwave links to be high availability. The last was just performance and scalability. We wanted it to be scalable when adding components and services, and we wanted to include traffic engineering. And this is really important in terms of microwave. I'll get to it in a minute. Throughput. So typically on microwave links at these distances, we have to use what's called a 6 gig or an 11 gig band. In those bands, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but you have a channel length and you have modulation. And typically, depending on the frequency, your throughput is on the order of about 320 to 460 megabits per second. And that's having a single radio or even 2 radios, which a lot of vendors offer, was not enough to meet our backhaul goal. We were trying to get to a 2 gig backhaul. One way we solve that is by using stacking filters. And these are not new, but they are not widely used. What you can do is actually stack radios and then lag them together using software to create what looks to be a single radio or single throughput. And by doing that, we were able to get throughputs as high as 1840 megabits for 6 gig and 1920 megabits for 11 gig. This also improves our reliability. Typically, microwave vendors will sell products in what they call a 1+1 or a 1+0 configuration. 1+0 meaning no backup, 1+1 meaning either a backup or a standby. With a 4+0 or a 6+0 configuration, if we lose a radio, we simply lose 320 or 460 megabits of bandwidth. We don't lose the full amount. The picture on the right shows our stacked filter at one of our sites. It's all done in waveguide. It's pretty complex. It uses bandpass filters, isolators, resonators to achieve it. But if you're into RF, it's a beautiful thing. Another thing that was a concern was sharing bandwidth. A lot of broadband or middle mile microwave, what they'll do is they'll separate out public safety and broadband. We did not want to do that, mainly because of economies of scale. We felt if we could get our throughput requirements that we could share bandwidth between a single microwave link. And that's what we did. We shared bandwidth such that TV, FM, PCBI, county internet, public safety, all traverse the same pipe. And we also, there's something this is really made possible using MPLS and BPLS. And we can put quality of service on these various pipes. Public safety, we always rank the highest. Our Pitkin County broadband system, we do a medium, and this is just an example. There's actually more levels. TV, FM, we do low. Email and web related, we do best effort. Resiliency was another big factor in this project. Actually, the City of Aspen Meet Me Center is really a single Meet Me Center from a logical perspective, but we separated out into 2 facilities for physical and geographical dispersion. Paul Schultz and his team are the Project THOR host for our fiber coming into the valley. But this, and also when we started doing this, really Project THOR was in its infancy, and we were some of the first, we had some of the first switches that were actually connected to Project THOR. Both City of Aspen and Pitkin County purchased their switches and then turned them over to Project THOR to manage. But each one of these switches has diversity. We have a 10G link between both of them. The City of Aspen Meet Me Center is actually located in the Armory building, and the Pitkin County Sienna switch is located in our 911 dispatch center. Both are connected via CenturyLink and Comcast 10G, and both are running MPLS, and we've experienced, Paul and I will tell you, we've experienced a number of failures since this was implemented, I believe in 2020, both in terms of CenturyLink cuts coming up valley, as well as Comcast cuts coming up valley. And the system kept working without a hiccup. So this is really a testament really to Paul and his team, as well as Project THOR and Nate Wolowitz and his team. One of the things we elected to do was use MPLS for our project. MPLS stands for multi-protocol label switching. It really sits between the network layer and the data link layer, and is commonly referred to as layer 2.5 in many circles. It's a protocol that started in the mid-90s, and it really came to be because of back in the mid to late 90s, there were core routers that were continued to get bigger and faster. And each time a packet traverses the network, it has to go through a router table and look up to where its destination needs to go. And so these core routers were really pushing the limits of ASIC technology at the time. And ASIC technology could do 10,000 lookups a second, which when you think about it is amazing. But on these core routers, they still couldn't keep up with the demand for IP router lookup. So MPLS came along, and what MPLS does is it puts a tag or a label on the packet and creates what's called a label switch path. So as an example here, to get from router A to router D, a label switch path is created, and router B no longer has to look up where that packet goes. So it just creates a tunnel, and every packet from that point forward traverses the tunnel. And once it gets to its router D destination, it removes the label. But this particular technology, there's a lot of advantages to it. It's widely adopted. It's used by the major carriers, AT&T, Verizon. Project THOR uses it as well. It's highly scalable. It improves traffic routing. As I said, there is no longer IP lookups. And if you implement, there's other pieces of it. One is called traffic engineering. If you implement that, as an example here, if your link between router B and C becomes congested, it can take another path, go from B to C, back to D, or go from router A to C to D to deal with that congestion. Another feature in MPLS is called fast reroute. And in fast reroute, you actually create what's called a backup LSP. This takes up overhead. But if your LSP fails, it immediately switches over to the backup. Another nice feature with MPLS is it supports something called VPLS. This is a virtual private LAN service, and it's really an Ethernet multi-point switching network or broadcast domain, which rides over the MPLS network. And we're actually using that extensively, and I'll give you some examples here in a minute. This is our county MPLS network. We are using RSVP TE in this network. We are not using fast reroute though. As you can see, each one of our sites has an MPLS router in it. All the blue lines are microwave links. The red lines are fiber connections. The interior is all of Project THOR. So this includes the Sienna MPLS switches with links going out to CenturyLink and Comcast. I don't know how we do it on time. We're 12:25. I'll show a few more slides here. But these are really examples of how we use the VPLS mesh within the Pitkin County MPLS system. And again, think of this as strictly a broadcast domain. So for the Pitkin County Broadband Initiative, we've created a broadcast domain for 6 sites. These are on 6 tower sites. They're all using high capacity links. They're connected to the 2 MIPI centers in Aspen. And overall, this has been a highly successful project. Again, we're offering fixed wireless with 10, 25, and 40 meg packages. And this is all would not be possible with the help from our partners at City of Aspen, NWCCOG, and DOLA. Picture on the right shows our Rudai site, which was rebuilt 2 years ago. Here's another one that we're using for public safety. We partner with the state OIT and Holy Cross Energy on this one. We actually do handoffs to Holy Cross Energy and state OIT at our Sunlight site, as well as our Ajax site. And these in turn allow voice traffic to go to, and channels to get allocated by the state OIT zone controller in Grand Junction. This one I'm kind of really proud of. This is a broadband effort that we worked with the RE1 school district on. And the RE1 school district is the largest school district in the Roaring Fork Valley. It stretches from Glenwood Springs up to Basalt. And this is actually a project that started pre-pandemic. It did not get completed until last year. But the goal being to provide internet services to low-income families that are in mobile home parks. And there's actually 3 of them, 1 in Basalt and 2 in El Jebel. And what we did is we used a CBRS radio, and this panel for that is shown on the right. And that's mounted on a Pitkin County building in Basalt. But CBRS is the Citizens Broadband Radio System, and FCC recently allocated additional frequency in that band. Pitkin County won 2 channels at auction. And so we're using part of that frequency band to provide fixed wireless to students in these 3 mobile home parks. We have nearly 50 students covered now that did not have internet before. And we did this, to use a lawyer's term, we really did this pro bono. There was no cost to our team and to the county to make this happen. And it's just one of these things that makes us all, I think, feel good about how we've been able to solve a broadband issue during this pandemic. Here's another one for the Aspen Fire Protection District. This particular VPLS was to provide a prototype system to detect wildfires. 4 cameras were actually mounted on 4 of our tower sites, and with connections to the internet in order to download camera images to the cloud. And the purpose of this is going forward. Again, this was simply a prototype for now, but hopefully this will turn into a technology that can be used full-time during the summer to detect wildfires and then report on them quicker. Another one we did for Roaring Fork Rescue. I think I'll go ahead and move on. Here's one we did for Aspen Ski Company on a partnership. And I want to take a minute and talk about lessons learned on this project. There's quite a few. Like I said, we certainly had our challenges. This has been 4 long years in the making. But I would recommend that if anybody's planning to do a fixed wireless broadband system, that they think about each one of these. First of all being, make sure you perform feasibility studies. And this includes identifying assets, doing coverage analysis. Second, develop a cost model. You need to show sustainability. So this includes coming up with your capital expenses, your operational expenses, but not only for you, but also for your partners as well. They have to be profitable. We're partnering with the private sector. They're not going to get into this if they're not profitable. Third is, again, performing that wireless coverage analysis. I recommend that you work with your GIS departments to do that. Build relationships. This can't be done by yourself. This is a team effort, and it included multiple players to make this all happen. And also involve your community members. We periodically went out to caucuses within our area and talked to them about our plans and got their feedback. Also anticipate land use permit requirements. Most of our tower sites are on Forest Service land. You can't just rebuild a site. So in some cases, it requires environmental studies, NEPA studies. In fact, one site in particular took 3 years to get approved because they required a full NEPA study. And lastly, apply for grants early and often. These are expensive endeavors. We do have partners and do have help. I know that DOLA recently announced I believe it's a $15 million 50-50 grant fund. So my recommendation is to apply for these grants and do it often. And I think, so we're going to switch gears, and Paul's going to go ahead and talk about Aspen Community Broadband, and then I'll wrap it up with the Roaring Fork Broadband Project.
Okay, great. Thank you, Jeff. Good job. That's some great work that you and the team have done. If you could go to the next slide, please. So here's a map of the city of Aspen. It's pretty compact compared to what Jeff was talking about. It's less than 4 square miles. And you'll see a number of stars indicating mostly city facilities. There's some county facilities on there, but it gives you an idea of a fiber network that we've had in place for, in some places, over 20 years that was typically just used for city and county government operations. Next slide, please. So here's an overview of Northwest Colorado Project THOR. Nate Wallowitz and the Northwest COG team really did a fantastic job of pulling interested members in Northwest Colorado together and to partner and to put this 480-mile middle mile network together. It's a fiber network that has a number of rings in it. And for us here in Pitkin County at the very bottom, the main benefit that we see, and there's a lot of benefits, is really you see the 2 different fiber routes. As Jeff mentioned, the work that we're doing collaboratively is really important to have resiliency. There's the push to doing everything in the cloud, or as many things as possible in the cloud. Well, you have to be able to get to the cloud. And because of our geography, it used to be pretty difficult to count on your fiber broadband services staying up, and using MPLS TP when one or other of these routes that are geographically diverse blinks out, or somebody clever with a ditch witch takes them out, it automatically and seamlessly fails over. And I'm going to show a picture in a bit, but if you look in Grand County up at Granby, I'm going to show you a picture from some work that Nate and the Project THOR team did that was pretty amazing. Next slide, please. So here's that picture. So during the Cameron Peak fire, this is a picture from November 2020, and you can see in the foreground a splice truck making the final splice to provide a backup broadband link between Granby and Estes Park. And so the agility that THOR brings to this, and just generally speaking, having some control over your broadband future allows great efforts like this, where pretty quickly Nate pulled together a number of people that all worked hard together to be able to splice in that path as that fire approached. So this is one of the unexpected yet greatly appreciated benefits of being a member of the Project THOR network. Next slide, please. So how did we get to where we are? In terms of the fiber broadband network at City of Aspen, working with Pitkin County and others, we went to City Council in May. Our council was very supportive of joining Project THOR, becoming an Aspen Me Center host. And in February 2019, we started providing services to Pitkin County first, the city, and then other community anchor institutions in our area. And interestingly enough, Project THOR officially went live in 2020, in April of 2020. So we, in some sense, we jumped the gun. We had some assets that were in place by reusing fiber networks and data centers and skilled people for running fiber networks. And we were able to start serving customers earlier. And today, Aspen Community Broadband serves 16 customers, one of which is Pitkin County's broadband initiative, which Jeff talked about. Next slide, please. So back on this map, you can see the little blue symbols, the fiber symbols, show how we opportunistically used our existing fiber network. We did some interconnects, but certainly places that we already had fiber or were very close to, we were able to light them up. And you'll see in the upper left and in the bottom, going out of the city out to the more of Pitkin County through Pitkin County Broadband Initiative. Next slide, please. So Jeff's going to talk a lot more about this, but one of the projects that we are currently working on is expanding our fiber footprint and being able to have a new fiber route. And thanks to Holy Cross Energy, who on their own behest is creating a fiber network out to their sites, we're leasing some of that fiber so that we're going to have our own fiber network that goes from Glenwood Springs all the way to Aspen. And two of the main enhancements that this brings is lighting up Basalt. So Basalt will have a new fiber presence, and Jeff will talk about that. And our friends in town of Snowmass Village, they're doing a fiber build out, and they're also leveraging some Holy Cross fiber. So taking the work that we'd already done and the success of the Project THOR, we're able to use the Holy Cross fiber and expand our fiber reach even more. Next slide, please. So here's some of the lessons learned that we've gotten from doing the fiber broadband projects. Partnering and collaborating and learning from peers and partners. I can't overemphasize how important this is. As Jeff said, this isn't something you can do alone, from the technology part, to the business part, how do you do the pricing and everything. We had partners around the state, Northwest Colorado Broadband, it was one who had done this before and were very, very generous with their time and artifacts to help us get up and running pretty quickly. The second one is, see what kind of assets you currently have. We had an existing fiber network that was really used for government services, but now, in addition to that, is now serving anchor institutions in and around Aspen and in Pitkin County. The third one is one that is quite honestly still a work in progress for us, but municipalities like Carbondale and Basalt have what's called a shadow conduit ordinance. And so these things kind of go together, dig once, shadow conduit. And really the idea here is the vast majority of expense in getting fiber for us in the ground, either in other places aerial, is the construction. And certainly for underground, when there's construction projects underway, if you're able to throw a stick or two of conduit in there, it's going to save a huge amount of the cost in your fiber reach. We chose a kind of a lean startup, start small, build, measure, learn approach to start with a few customers, start with a few switches, and build out as we began to have success with that. I mentioned resiliency. It's very important, certainly for us to have that resiliency and have multiple fiber paths. And for us, there was a bit of a risk in build it and they will come. So we assumed, rightly so, it turns out that, if we had very resilient and high quality and price competitive broadband, that anchor institutions would be interested in that. And so build it and they will come worked out well for us. Next slide, please. All right, so I'll turn it back over to Jeff to give you a little more details about the Roaring Fork broadband project.
Yeah, hey, thanks, Paul. Yeah, so let's go into the next chapter of broadband within the Roaring Fork Valley. This is a collaboration between Pitkin County, City of Aspen, Town of Snowmass Village, and Town of Basalt to build on a Holy Cross Energy fiber initiative, as Paul said in an earlier slide. It's going to run 144 strands of fiber up valley from Glenwood Springs to Aspen. This project is primarily being done as an initiative by Holy Cross to meet what they're calling their 100 by 30 program, and that is to be on 100% renewables by the year 2030. They plan on connecting all of their substations to the grid, and this by connecting their substations via fiber, it will allow them to bring energy on and offline quicker at a much faster pace than what they could do without fiber. And this is really required for renewables now. Both battery, solar, you're getting renewables from different sources, and it all impacts the grid and how it operates. And they need to make really what are instantaneous decisions on how they bring that power into the grid. There was a $800K DOLA grant awarded to this team in support of it in June of 2021. The project itself is going to include a dedicated 100G network. We can scale up to 800G using wave optics if needed. So we have not only a high capacity system to begin with, but we have a scalable system for growth in the future. It's going to connect to Project THOR in both Glenwood and Aspen, and be highly resilient. It also includes new fiber or spin-offs from the Holy Cross Energy project, as well as a new optical switch fabric in both Aspen, Snowmass, and Basalt. And these are just really what's kind of on the icons on the left and right are all the partners involved in this project. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on this. These are really the project details. It includes a fiber lease. We will be leasing 6 strands of fiber from Holy Cross Energy. So we will have access to 6 strands of dark fiber on this project. This is huge. Today, we're leasing a 10G circuit from Contrast and CenturyLink. We do not have access to dark fiber. It's only a circuit. It includes the provisioning of optics and switches throughout the path. Town of Basalt, we're actually doing a pretty extensive fiber build within the town of Basalt. We're connecting other sites. One is the Pitkin County landfill or solid waste center. We're connecting a communication site. So one of the things, if you go back to our MPLS network design, none of our communication sites have fiber today. This will be the first comm site within Pitkin County that has fiber. There's an Aspen fiber interconnect, and this is really to get the Holy Cross Energy fiber into the city of Aspen fiber and connections to meet me centers. There's also a CDOT Brush Creek Park and Ride, and that is going to connect both RAFTA and CDOT facilities, and in order to improve valley-wide transportation. And there's also an agricultural component City of Aspen is going to be connecting Cozy Point Ranch. This is a diagram of our fiber switch design. We have 3 fiber pairs that will be going up valley from Glenwood to Aspen. We have what we're calling the express lane. This is our 100G super highway, if you will, of bandwidth going up valley. And then we have 2 fiber pairs that are going to be using 10 gig. And all 3 of these fiber pairs are using simply Ethernet for now. But we certainly have the option to go to wave optics if you want to increase bandwidth in the future. We also decided to purchase the latest and greatest from Sienna. So these support segment routing. It's going to provide better functionality for both IP and MPLS networks going forward. And so we're hoping to kind of experiment with some of these things. And hopefully we can pass off our knowledge on to Project THOR and others as well. Here's the overall status in terms of the Holy Cross Energy build. They've completed nearly 10,000 feet of underground conduit. Like most of us these days that are working on big projects, we have material delays. And that's a result of the pandemic. Holy Cross was no exception there. They did have some material delays. They originally were planning to do their aerial fiber last year, but because of material delays are now going to resume work in April. This entire project we anticipate being completed later this summer or early fall. But in terms of the other partners, we've completed the design and engineering. Basically, this includes all the underground conduit as well as aerial expanses. We've released an RFP, which actually just released on Friday. And as far as materials and equipment goes, we're fortunate that all the materials for this project have arrived and are now in storage. And we did not experience any huge material delays like others have. We've also ordered all of our fiber optic switches, and we anticipate those are all arriving here in the next month. This shows really the Project THOR map. Out of Aspen, we have a 10G Comcast and 10G CenturyLink today. We will be adding 100G Warren Fork broadband as part of this effort. This kind of just shows, this was a natural disaster that happened in Glenwood Canyon. I'm sure all of you are familiar with it, but the Glenwood Canyon mudslide. So it took out CDOT fiber in the canyon. The picture bottom left insert shows the damaged fiber. It was a steel conduit, and it's just a garbled mess, which was amazing what it did to a steel conduit. The picture on the right shows repairs that were underway in December. But our big shout out and thank you go to our partners at OIT, NWCCOG, because this took out a major link to our valley, yet we never knew it. We kept running. And so this is just a major testament to the entire Project THOR network. And lastly, I think we're right at 12:50, so I think the timing's good. But a big thank you to all of our partners in the collaboration. Kind of everything shown on your left is really everybody involved to make this happen, from public safety to counties, municipalities, co-ops, school districts, as well as OIT, DOLA, and NWCCOG. And thank you very much. And our email addresses are shown there. If you want to email us, we'd be happy to take any questions afterwards, and you're certainly welcome. I think we have 10 minutes left to ask any questions you have now.
Yeah, Jeff and Paul, we've got a question coming in from Corey Brindle. And using new Holy Cross fiber, have you approached Comcast or Lumen for fiber swap? that could protect their services too.
All right, I'll take that. So interesting question. We have had conversations with one of those big ISPs about adding resiliency. So from this Aspen City Council, they've seen the work that we've done on our network, and I'm chuckling because they want their home networks to be as reliable as ours. There's been more than one instance where a council member came into one of our city buildings to get internet because they didn't have it at home. So the short answer, without going too far, is yes, there's conversations underway, and we welcome those. In terms of community benefit, if we could help our citizens get better and more reliable broadband, we're all for it. So that's a yes.
Other questions for either Jeff or Paul? I will say, as people are formulating their questions, that was a great presentation. I mean, it gives us a well-integrated plan and model for others that are attempting to do something similar for their regions or for their counties or municipalities. So thank you for putting in the time, the effort, bringing this presentation to us. And does anyone have any questions? I always think that's a great sign, guys, because that means you covered it very thoroughly. So
Okay.
As you can see, we've got both Jeff and Paul's contact information up, and we're getting thank you very much in on chat. Reach out to them. They have thought this out. They've got a good plan. They've learned some hard lessons that you may not have to go down those paths if you reach out and talk to them. We do appreciate your time today. We thank you. I did jokingly text Nate Walowitz that he owed you guys a payment. So with Project THOR. So anyway, yeah, here we go from Jason. That was a thorough briefing. We were doing something similar for Colorado Springs. Thank you, Jason, for your comment. Nora said, great presentation. Appreciate your work on the project. So anyway, Jeff, Paul, thank you so much for joining us for our Lunch and Learn series. Let everybody know online that we will have this on the broadband website with the Colorado Broadband Office. Give us a couple, 3 days. I like to give our speakers a chance to let me know if there's any edits that we need to make or add any information. But again, we always have the Lunch and Learn. We have it every month. Usually it's the 3rd or 4th week of each month. And we appreciate your participation. Jeff, Paul, thank you so much. What a great presentation. Thank you for all the hard work that you've done to bring broadband to your communities and to show the rest of us how it's done.
Our pleasure.
Thank you, Ed. Appreciate it.
See you later. Goodbye.
All right. So long.